before I get started, I got to recognize my wife. I'm going to ask her to stand. They're going to hand out some things, I think, that she put together. She is a very crafty person, so she handmade a lot of this stuff. Also, I do some drawing, and so when I was asked to do this, Rachel asked me to. She said, "Why don't you just draw something that kind of tells about what is going on?" So I sat down and about an hour and a half I drew this drawing. So we're going to hand that out. If you want it, take it. If you don't, throw it away. I don't care. It's not that big of a deal. All right. And also I've got to give her credit. In the first week in August of 1968, I kissed her goodbye at the Amarillo Airport, got on a plane, headed for Fort Lewis, Washington, from there to Vietnam. And to kind of regress a little bit, on January the 25th of 1968, I walked into the house from work. She handed me a letter, and I already knew what it was, because the draft board had been after me for 2 years. I had done everything I could to get out of going to the Army. I'll be very honest with you. They almost got a one-armed man because they knew to pull one arm off getting me there. So I just, I looked at that letter and it says, "Your friends and neighbors have volunteered you," and it was signed by Lyndon Johnson. I got over there and got shot at. I thought, I'd like to see those friends and neighbors. I'd like to really talk to them. But on 27th of February, I was at Fort Bliss in El Paso, and I was tall and skinny, and I didn't think they would take me into the Army, but I tell you what, there was a guy in front of me that had a CNI dog that had flat feet, and that's the only reason they didn't take him. So, I knew that I was in trouble, but anyway, I went directly into the Army, and when I first got drafted, I thought, I'm not sure I can kill anybody. I really was thinking that. And about my third or fourth day of basic training, I looked at that drill sergeant and I said, I can kill that son of a bitch. But, I don't talk about this very much. I'll be honest with you. I don't, because, the deal is, if you get with guys and start talking about it, it's kind of like the county fair. It gets bigger and better every time you tell it. So I kind of leave this stuff alone because it's a part of my life that I felt that was not good. Even though I was drafted, I went in and did exactly what I had to do. And I saw a lot of young men. I'm talking about 17, 18-year-old kids, laying there dying, and I was trying to keep them alive. And I had 10 weeks of what they call advanced training to do that. And I've just got some slides here, pictures that was taken. I don't know who took them. I don't know where they come from. I had a lot of slides at one time that showed bodies laying out there, and I destroyed all that crud. I don't need that in my life, and I got rid of those. So I'm just going to show you all some slides and kind of talk about them. And if you have a question, interrupt me. That would be a whole lot better. I can answer questions a whole lot easier than I can just stand up here and talk. Yes, ma'am.
How old were you when you were drafted?
21 years old. I was old. When I got to Vietnam, I was old. And most of those kids were 17, 18 years old. And so I was 21 years old. Like I said, I've been fighting the draft for 3 years. Because the day I had to sign up when I turned 18, the little town that I was from, they didn't have very many people to choose from, so they came after me. In fact, at one time, I was trying to tell them, I think I'm going to go and be a preacher. I was doing anything to get out of it. I'll be very honest with you. And ain't no way I could be a preacher, okay? Understand that. So, but anyway, all they needed was a body. That's all they needed. So I'm going to just start here, and these are just some pictures. Like I said, I don't know where they come from. You know, you can tell wherever we were there. I was, let me see if I can get here. This is just one of the guys in my platoon. I don't know where we come up with sunglasses. You know, we were just looking cool there, whatever it was, but we had sunglasses there. And when the platoon would come in, they had what they call a fire support base camp. It was probably about 100 yards in a 100-yard circle, had 12 bunkers around it, and each company, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, all was responsible for about 3 of those bunkers. And so at one time or another, each platoon from those companies would be in as kind of security for that fire support base camp, because in that fire support base camp, there's artillery pieces, there's the main medic station and things like that. So these are just some of us medics that was in there at the time when we were there, not out on patrol or whatever. We would all just stay around what they call the aid station there. And so this is just some of us. I don't remember who all these guys are, all except for a couple of them was close friends of mine. This was along the bunker line. This was just a picture. A guy had a camera and he said, "Let me take your picture." So I did that. This is another just fantastic pictures of a skinny guy. And so
This is our proof that you were skinny at one time.
I'm sorry?
This is our proof that you were skinny.
Yeah, I was skinny at one time. Now I can't button my pants. So. The guy that's standing on the left was my very best friend. His name was Antonio Z. Luza. He was from Oakland, California, and he and I were very close. He was a medic there, and these are just some of the other guys. This shows you what some of those fire support base camps looks like. It's all bunkers and sandbags. Sandbags were your protection, mostly. And so when we were in, like, working security in the base camp, or we would feel sandbags. You feel sandbags till the world looked flat. So those are just some of the things that we would be doing while we were in there. This was Christmas Day of 1968. We had been in a firefight earlier that morning. And after I'd gotten our guys out, after I got dust-offs in to take care of our wounded or whatever, there was a village that was very close there that we'd been calling in artillery and airstrikes and different things. You know, gunships were out there, and these guys that flew these planes, you know, they were our savior. I mean, you know, we'd get in a firefight, it wouldn't be long before gunships would be on station there with us. And so, but anyway, somehow some of these civilians in that village got hurt, and so they came to me and they said, "Can you go and you know, help these people?" Because this lady that's laying here on this litter, she was in pretty bad shape. And that's me standing or kneeling right beside the guy that's got the M60 machine gun. And my other friend, he was there also. We was out there working on those folks. So that's how I spent Christmas Day of 1968. I'd been in a firefight. Santa Claus didn't come, but the North Vietnamese did. So that's just how I spent that day of 1968. And also, I'll just tell you one other thing. I remember Thanksgiving Day of 1968. We were out in the field, and you know the Army always makes sure you have turkey and dressing on both Thanksgiving and Christmas. And they brought out on a helicopter, they brought these cans out that had turkey and dressing. I'm sorry?
They were in Mermite cans.
Yeah, there were big green cans like that. And so, but we had been in contact, and so while we sat there and ate our Thanksgiving meal, they brought in airstrikes all around us just to kind of keep them off of us while we was eating our Thanksgiving meal. So I never sat down to Thanksgiving dinner. That I don't go back to 1968 when I was sitting on a fallen tree eating the best turkey and dressing I'd ever had, because we had probably been eating sea rations for a week, you know. So that's what I think about. You know, I hear the jets dropping their ordnance out there all around us, and we're sitting there eating Thanksgiving dinner. So that's what I think of when I get to, when I sit down every Thanksgiving day, even all these years later. I was wounded the very first time on September the 16th, 1968. I got hit about probably 1:30 in the morning, and I laid out there till about 5:30 in the morning before they could get everything backed off of us enough to get the helicopters in to evacuate our dead and our wounded. And I was laying out there, I've been hitting the hip with shrapnel, and I thought I would, wasn't sure I'd ever walk again. I couldn't hardly move from my waist down. And when I first got hit, I thought, I didn't know what happened. I thought, you know, this isn't right. Everybody says when you get hit, it just burns a little. It hurt like hell, you know. So I thought I couldn't be, and my platoon sergeant said, "Doctor, you all right?" And so I just kind of mumbled or whatever, and he jumped over me and just hit my butt, and his hand come up bloody. But it was like 5:30 in the morning before they could get helicopters in there to get us out and get our dead and wounded out. And so I always think of September the 16th, 1968. The second time I was wounded, well, I'm going to tell you. Well, in fact, one of the guys in my platoon, when they was loading me on that helicopter, they said, "You'll be going home." And I thought, oh, I'm ready to go home, you know. I'd only been there like 6 weeks. And so after they fixed me up, and come to find out that I had what they called a critical MOS. So, because I was a combat medic, they said if I'd just been a line dog, they'd have sent me home. But because I was a medic, they fixed my wounds up and everything, and I recuperated in country there, and then they sent my skinny white ass back out there. So and when I went back out around the first of the year, when I started actually, what I would do is I was kind of like, after I got wounded the first time, I was like a utility person. If we had a medic that had been killed out there or hurt, they'd put me on a helicopter and send me out there, and I'd drop off sometimes in the middle of a firefight. So, but back on around the first of the year, I went with a recon unit, and a lot of those times we would just be running around in Jeeps, and so that was kind of fun. So when I was doing that, I carried, rather than my M16, I carried what they called the blooper. Because if we were out walking, I wasn't carrying that thing. It was all that stuff was way too heavy. But that's just a picture of that. I don't know if we were coming in or going out or whatever there. Like I said, I don't know who took these pictures. This is a picture of me sitting there reading a book. And if you want to know how you took a bath over there, if you ever took one, see that little thing hanging from the top? You put water in there, and then you turn that, and water would come out of that. So that's how you got a book. And some friends of mine said, "Oh, were you sitting there reading the Bible?" I said, "I doubt it, you know. No, I don't think so." But my mother-in-law, she was great. She would send me every new Louis L'Amour book that would come out. So that's what I was probably sitting there reading, is what I'm thinking. But this is inside one of those bunkers. This is kind of what you lived in, you know. And you see that tray thing that I've got? That's an artillery pieces comes in, and see those boxes along? Those are all filled with dirt and everything, but that's what artillery shells come in. And so I had the top of one of those and was kind of using this desk. I'm sure it was writing Rachel a letter there. And the second M16 from the left, that is my M16. That was mine. I kept a little yellow piece of tape around it. I don't know where I got it. So when we had to grab our weapons, I would know, you know, that was my weapon. So that's where I was there. And again, if you have questions, I'd rather you ask questions than me just them. I've got to tell you the story about this dog. I don't know where it showed up from, but this was in our fire support base camp. And this dog showed up, and of course we fed it, and we, you know, fed it, and we made it mean, and, you know, when we were in there. But on February the 25th, we were in hellacious ground attack. In fact, the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, they took 2 of the bunkers on our bunker line from us and were fighting us from those bunker lines. And I remember about, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it was incredible. I thought, you know, if daylight would just hurry up and get here, you know, we can push everything back. Well, daylight got here and a lot of those guys was trapped inside our bunker line, and the fighting really got severe. And so finally about 10:30 or 11 o'clock, we got everything pushed back, and they sent a couple of the platoons out, what they called, to just go and follow what they call blood trails, to see if there's some of them alive out there. And I walked out past our bunker line, and I'm going to say there was probably 100 or 120 dead North Vietnamese and Viet Cong laying out there. They finally had to bring a bulldozer in on the helicopter, dig a hole and push all those people into that. Because after, you know, getting hot, those bodies would start, you know, it was bad. But to tell you about that dog, I shouldn't have said all that. I'm sorry. Forgive me, dog. That afternoon, so that dog came back into the fire support base camp, and he had about that much of a hand in his mouth. After that, we couldn't pet that dog again. We just said that was it. No more. No. I don't even remember what we had named that dog. Lord only knows. This is where we had probably gone into a village, pushed everybody to the middle, and we were searching all of the hooches and huts for weapons and whatever, because within our area, a lot of those villages, they hid the North Vietnamese, and so we would go in sometimes early in the morning and just push all those people to the middle and then search every hooch for weapons or whatever. And so this was what we called a scout that we had that went with us on our platoon. And his name was San. His dad was a professor at the Saigon University. Remember that much about him. He was a pretty neat guy. And this is just the base camp. We had obviously moved to base camp and was getting ready, because there you see we're just building a bunker. And what you see in the background, all that dust and stuff back there, that's the 105 howitzers being fired back there. So I don't know where I come up with that helmet, probably in some village. But I was standing there like that. You know, not very impressive. But anyway. And this is in another one of those villages that we had probably gone into, and somebody had a guitar, and I was serenading somebody, and I couldn't play the guitar. This was a good. Well, they didn't know I couldn't, you know. This is a good friend of mine. He was in the artillery, the 105. So when I'd be in, we'd talk a lot, you know, lie to each other. This is just out in the field. We'd come in on those helicopters when we were getting ready to go out on a mission or whatever. You can see some of what they call APCs. These are, this kid on the left, I went through basic training and AIT with him. And we were in the Michelin rubber plantation one night, and I mean, what we were doing was the South Vietnamese government wanted to go in and move all those villages out of there because those people were hiding the North Vietnamese. So we were going in there, surrounding those villages, loading all those people up on trucks and getting them out of there. And we'd gotten into this place late that evening. And that night, probably about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, I don't remember exactly. I mean, they started hitting us from all sides. And so my platoon was over kind of like on the west side of that village, and they radioed over that they said that the platoon that was over on the east side of that village, that the medic had been hurt bad. And they wanted me to come over there. So my lieutenant told a guy to go with me, and we had to run all the way through that village. And of course, helicopters, whatever, was dropping flares and stuff around. And that was a weird looking color. It was just a color yellow. You just have to see it. And we ran through that village, and I thought, you know, we're going to get our ass blown away here. But we made it across there, and I got there and got to when I realized who it was, that was my friend, Phil Stevens, that was laying there. He had holes in his back that big. And I was laying out there working on him, and he already had a couple of guys that were dead, and working on another guy, but I was mainly working on Phil. And these rounds kept coming in, I mean, just all around us and being close. And I thought it was gunships that was, you know, hitting into our area. And then I yelled, and I said, somebody needs to radio that gunship and tell him to quit because he's getting into our area. And they said, that's not a gunship. They said they've got what they call recoilless rifles out there. And I mean, they were chewing us up. And so it was probably about 9 o'clock in the morning before I was able to get helicopters in to get those wounded guys out. I'm not sure there was any dead amongst that crew. There might have been. I can't remember. Sorry. But the dust-offs got full, and there was what they called a brigade commander. He was a colonel. He was in one of those big Hueys, and he radioed down that he said he had picked up the other 2 or 3 guys that we couldn't get on that dust-off. So he landed, and when they threw that door open, there was a full-bird colonel, a major, and a captain sitting on this seat. And I told the 3 guys that could walk, I said, y'all get in there regardless of what they say. I said, get on that helicopter. And we had Phil Stevens on what we called a portable litter, which was just a piece of nylon with handles on each side of it. And I mean, Phil had been bleeding pretty bad, but when that colonel saw where he said just put him, you know, lay Phil across their legs there. And when we lifted him up there and they started going across, all those guys were sitting there in spit-shine boots and, you know, starch fatigues. I mean, blood just went all over them. And that, I had great respect for that guy for saying, you know, get those kids on here and get them out. But that was Phil Stevens. And when I got back, I'd been in Fort Lewis, Washington for about, I don't know, a couple of 3 months. And I walked into a PX, and this guy called my name. I said, all right. He had made it out. Everything was good. This story, and I'm getting towards the end here. I know I'm probably getting close on my time. So, there was a village about probably a half a mile from where we had our fire support base camp, and every time we went through there, we'd get somebody hurt. We'd get somebody shot or whatever, and we hated those people. We just, you know, because they killed our guys, they hurt our guys. So as we would leave out of there, somebody would invariably set some of their houses on fire. You know, what they do is take a piece of C4, stick a cigarette in it, light it, and then just set it under there. And then when that started fire, their houses. Well, no wonder they were shooting at us. Good Lord, I thought, how stupid can we be? You know. Anyway, we out of that village one day, somebody got, you know, eat up with a dumbass. I guess they fired at a Cobra gunship out of that village with rifles. Well, that guy just turned around and put rockets into that place. Well, within an hour, they started bringing those people up to what we called our wire out there that were wounded and hurt. And this little kid was one of them. He had a pretty bad head wound. And I worked on that kid, got him on a helicopter out of there. And this is probably a month or 2 later, probably at least, you know, 6 weeks or whatever. We were doing what we called a search and destroy. We just surrounded this village. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, woke everybody up, pushed them all to the middle of that village, and just made them stand there while we went through each hutch again, looking for weapons. And you know, when you're out amongst those people, if the kids are around you, you know you're all right. You know you were pretty close to everything was going to be okay. And I mean to tell you, those people were standing there, you know, they were probably cussing us in Vietnamese, I don't know. But anyway, none of the kids would come out and want candy or soap or whatever you would have in your pockets, you know. They were all just staying in there. And finally, this kid here, he worked because he had come into our base camp up there, and we'd change his bandages and everything, but he worked his way to the edge of that, and he saw me and recognized me. Well, he comes flying out of there. Well, when he came out, all the other kids did, so everybody kind of relaxed and said, well, we're not going to get shot at right now. So that's the story behind that little boy. I don't know, you know, whatever happened to him, but he was something else. we'd change his bandages and then load him up with food and whatever. And somebody said they drove, Colonel, did you ever drive a Cobra gunship?
I flew one this year.
You did. This is what they call it. This was your best friend in a firefight. I'm here to tell you. These guys could bring it in close and give you good support. So we always wanted to see those. The story behind this Christmas tree. Somebody's parents sent them this Christmas tree. It was an aluminum Christmas tree, ugly as all get out. I promise you. It was bad coming out of the box. Well, this is by probably, I don't know, this may be March or April. We had that tree still up sitting out there, and it had been shot up a couple of times. You know, we'd get mortared or shelled or whatever, and shrapnel would go through that tree. And finally, I don't remember at what point, it finally just got blown away totally. So that's the story of that Christmas tree. You know, it's weird the things you think about or see. Of course, this is just me. This guy right here, I just come back from what they call R&R. I waited till I'd been in Vietnam 9 months, because I said when I come back, I don't want to have any more time there than I absolutely have to spend. So I knew I had probably about 7 weeks or 6 to 7 weeks when I came back from R&R. I met Rachel in Hawaii, then when I got back, but this was my good friend that worked in the artillery there. And why this is important, I was sitting there telling him about R&R, and there's always a radio going, and for the very first time that I ever heard that sung by Otis Redding, sitting on the dock of the bay, I was sitting there talking to him. So now, every time I hear Otis Redding sing, sitting on the dock of the bay, you know, that's where I go to. Sorry. And again, this is just where we had been put in and was getting ready to go out with the track unit. So I guess that's the end of it. Boys and girls? All right.
Take your microphone back, and for the sake of the video, the people that aren't here, what I want to ask you is you'll say your name, your rank in country, and your combat MOS.
Okay. Dan Redd, I was with the 1st Battalion, 27th Infantry, 25th Infantry Division in Vietnam from August of 1968 to August of 69. My MOS was a combat medic.
And your rank?
I was the E5 when I left out of there.
Thank
I have a question.
Okay.
So, my
I got somebody up here and then you.
Yeah. So basically, my question is, I know that war is very terrible and these kinds of things, but what were some good things about it? One, and when you came back, did the military do enough for your transition back to civilian life?
Last question. Excuse me. No, they just turned me loose and, you know, on the world. Years and years later, I did go,
You have to tell about the dog,
what?
the Agent Orange. You have to
Well, let me answer this first. And the VA eventually sent me to 3 psychiatrists because they said, you have PTSD. I said, I don't have PTSD. I said, and this was after, I guess this is after I retired and when I was 72 years old. I said, I have you know, worked all my life. I've taken care of my wife. To me, people that had PTSD was the guys that were, you know, standing around the wall up there in Washington, D.C. wearing jungle fatigues, you know. I thought, get over it. Let's go. Well, these psychiatrists told me, he says, no, you definitely have PTSD. He said, number one, because of the job you did. And so I said, well, you know, whatever. In fact, one of the psychiatrists was asking me one day, he said, did you ever freeze up during combat? And I had to stop and think about it, you know, because, I mean, when I first got over there, I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Well, that didn't last very long, you know. But he asked me, he said, did you ever freeze up? And I had to think about it, and finally I says, no. Excuse my language, but this is exactly what I said to him. I said, I was scared shitless several times, but he said, I said, I don't ever think I froze up. He said, that was a good answer. So later on, the VA did, help me. I've drawn 80% disability. A lot of it, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and they think it was because of Agent Orange. We were out one morning, we had what we called a dog and a dog handler out with us, and that was the very first time I'd ever been around, dogs or dog handlers or anything like that out in combat. And it was, I don't know, it was kind of early in the morning that I remember, and these airplanes flew over and just dumped that crap all over us. I mean, we were soaked. That dog was going nuts. He was freaking out. So they called in a helicopter, picked up the damn dog and the dog handler, took them out and left us out there. I told my guys, I said, y'all know what we're worth. Not worth the dog. Okay, I hope I answered some of your questions there. Somebody back there. Rachel, just a second. Somebody back here had a question.
What determined you becoming a medic? Was good?
No, I don't know how that happened. I just,
I think you're assigned by the Pentagon, aren't
well,
you?
they looked at my tests that you take when in there, and I scored pretty high on all that stuff. And I've only guessed. Now I'm going to admit, I wasn't that smart. I was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I know that, but I did all right. I'm sorry, what were you wanting?
And tell about the letter that you wrote me. You were hurt.
When I got wounded the first time, I had signed a deal when I went in that unless I was killed, I didn't want Rachel notified if I got hurt. I didn't want her worrying about me. So to tell you the night that or the morning they finally got me into that hospital, those people, I was in that hospital, that evacuation hospital, and that's cutting my clothes off of, and all of us had ringworm. During the day, we'd go without our shirt out there, as long as we could, if we wasn't too deep in the jungle. But walking through those rice paddies and stuff, we all had ringworm from here down, And so when those guys I was awake enough when those guys were cutting my clothes off, this one doctor says, good God, look at that ringworm. And I thought, the ringworm isn't the problem. I got a hole back there in my head. We can take care of the ringworm, I know that. So it was probably about a day or two later that I was kind of coming out of everything, and I thought, well, I need to write Rachel. So I started writing her a letter, and I thought I did a great job. I mean, I told her, I said, well, I got hurt, I'm all right, blah, 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 And so sent that letter to her, and she freaked out, of course, but later on, when I saw the letter, I started up here, Dear Rachel, da-da-da-da, and I was down to the middle of the page, and I'd go to sleep writing it. I sat there and like that, so I can see why she freaked out about the letter. Okay, anybody else?
Did you train at Fort Sam Houston?
Yes, sir, I did, AIT. That's 10 weeks of basic medical knowledge. What you really learn is laying out there at night, and some kid's got his brain shot out, and you're trying to keep him alive. That's where you learn.
That's where I trained,
Yeah.
Fort Sam.
You lose a guy, he's, probably if he was in the best trauma center, he wouldn't have made it, but you feel like if I'd done this, if I'd have done that, And I'll tell you what, I have nightmares, even to this day. I have nightmares. I see some of those guys, and it's just what it is. I think there won't be in this.
You have to tell about that who got a job.
When I got out, Amarillo is there's a place there called Pantex, which is the final assembly point of all nuclear weapons in the United States. So I applied out there. I wanted to be a draftsman, but because of my military experience and being a medic, they wanted me to go into this program to train to be a physician's assistant. And I thought, I don't care if somebody's got a headache. I've worked with somebody who's got their brain shot out. I didn't want to go there. I said, no, I don't want that. And I've regretted that the rest of my life, I promise you.